I am a poor, wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world of woe. There is no sadness, no toil, no danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my mother, and she said she'd meet me when I come. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home. Well, that was embarrassing. I messed that up so bad. Well, good morning, everybody. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Welcome to Shop Talk 103. And if you want to hear a good version of that, you can go to my website and download the song there. And, it's much better than that version. Oh, my gosh. I thought I could do that. Just shows what I know. And speaking of what I know I owe a big apology. A biggin? I owe a big apology to Streamlabs OBS because it was my fault, not their fault. I screwed up. I admit it. I'm big enough to admit it when I'm wrong. If I can call them out on it when I think they're wrong, I can sure admit it when I'm wrong. And I was wrong. At least 95% of it was my fault. I'm going to give them 5% of the fault for making it so unintuitive. If they make it a little more intuitive, it'd be a lot simpler to handle. And some people that are going to know about streaming are going to say, it's very intuitive. It's only very intuitive if you're already into streaming and understand streaming software. 99 people out of 100 off the street wouldn't have a clue where to get started with that software. That's what intuitive means, that anybody can look at it and figure it out. Not anybody can look at that and figure it out. But to make a long story short, bottom line is one of the comments and then other comments suggested I tried just regular Streamlabs. Well, I had tried Streamlabs before, Streamlabs OBS. I'm sorry, I'm getting my names mixed up. Streamlabs OBS is what I'm using. There's another one called OBS Studio, and they suggested I try OBS Studio. Well, I had tried it before and had trouble with it, so that's why we went to Streamlabs in the first place. But anyway, between the comment and trying it in the other studio, I thought, uh-oh, I see what I did wrong. And sure enough, I figured it out when I went back into Streamlabs. So I am using Streamlabs today. My most humble apology to them. You know, I screwed up, and that's all there is to it. It allowed me to screw up, though, was one of the problems. What I do, there's a thing where you name something in a scene and then you name it over in the sources, and I gave it the same name, and that caused confusion in the long list of hotkey scroll. It's just too complicated to explain, but it was my fault. Okay, moving on from there, now that I've made my apologies. I thought I'd give you a few channel stats. YouTube channel stats right now. I joined YouTube, according to them, on November 19th, 2013. So this is my 10-year year anniversary, along with my 40-year anniversary for being a luthier. So this was a big year for me. And presently, I have 1,209 videos on YouTube. There are a few of those that are private. But let's see, we have had, here's the big number, 22,657,811 views so far. 22 million. Couldn't I just get 1 penny a piece for all those? And then we've had 80, or we presently just passed the 86,000 subscriber mark. So, if you're watching this and you're not yet subscribed, what are you waiting on? Get out there and subscribe. Help me get past that 100,000. This old man just wants to do that. That's my goal. I want to make 100,000 subscribers. Why? Because I want the stupid little plaque. All right, I'm drinking by the way, I'm drinking the heavy stuff today. For all you guys that like that heavy stuff, I'm drinking an Arnold Palmer. Do you know what an Arnold Palmer is? It's half tea and half lemonade. Yeah, I'm drinking the heavy stuff. And it's sweet too, by the way. Moving right along. JP Cormier, his channel, I've talked about him before, how wonderful of a musician he is. The guy is phenomenal. Crazy phenomenal. One of you in your comments pointed out that he had said something nice about me on his Wednesday night live string theory program. So if you want to check that out, that is in the description. There's a link to his Wednesday night string theory. I don't know what I said. Did I say Wednesday night? That's what I meant. Wednesday night is correct. It was his last Wednesday night string theory program, and there is a link in the description. So check that out if you want. The guitar status here. Let me show you that. I made progress on it yesterday. First of all, I got everything pretty much glued up on this thing, except for the rattle on the inside. I can still hear a rattle, and I've looked and checked and moved and pulled and tapped and you name it, and I can't find where it's at. I know it's in one of those back braces that I just can't tell where it's at, though. So I'll not worry about that for now. I don't think that's a significant problem. It's just that I wish it was fixed. I've started working on the neck angle, and what I did was I cut off the heel so that the neck could drop down lower. When I say cut off the heel, what I mean is off this edge right here. Like I started down here and tapered it up to nothing up here. So I'm taking it off. I took off, I'm going to say close to a 1/16 of an inch, probably not quite that much, up to nothing. That lets the neck drop down and keep the seam here tight. And now the neck angle, and I'm exaggerating, but now the neck angle is angled down like it should be. It's kind of like this. And anyway, it now just barely clears the bridge, which is what you want when you get, your straight edge on there. But that made the joint really, really loose. But I've tightened the joint back up, although it's still not real good yet. I glued shims on here yesterday. So I've got shims glued on this. I need to carve them down, and I need to put what I do is I put my carbon paper in there and I see where it's rubbing, and then I carve away the rub marks, and this will eventually go tight. Right now it's off the top here by 1/8 inch, something like that. So Anyway, once I get that carved down, I think this will be tight enough and I'll be able to glue it. And it should be good. So that should take care of that. We have a next project in line, and I'll tell you what, I'll let you watch this for just a second and I'll go get that and we'll see what it is, because I don't even know what it is myself right at the moment, but we might as well find out. Well, it looks like the next one has been here since November 22nd. That's how far behind I am. And it's a Martin guitar. It looks like it is a D18. It's what it says there. Nice guitar. And it's in for setup work, so that shouldn't take too long. That'll probably get knocked out yet this week. I'll get started on that and get that done. So that's what's next. It's hard to keep up with everything, I'll tell you that. And, quite honestly, I guess I'm less and less motivated all the time as I'm getting older. By the way, while I'm thinking of it, you could be putting your questions in. I see some of you are already doing that. Be sure to put several question marks at the beginning of your question, and I'll get to those in a little bit here. The slideshow. The infamous rant, which I was completely wrong about. Anyway, I do have a slideshow for you here, and hopefully I can remember how to work it. This farm, we have deeds on this farm back to the 1850s, so it's a very old farm. And, I just think you'll enjoy seeing some of these pictures, and we'll talk about a few of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to let them play. I think each picture stays on for about 8 seconds, something like that. But if there's something I want to tell you, I'll pause it. Well, it's not starting off good. That's the last picture. Oh my gosh. Let me see if this will... That's not good. How did it? I may have to go into the settings. Oh, doggone it. I can't believe it. Right off. Let's see. I'll just say always play even when not visible. I don't know. There you go. That's an overhead view of some of the farm. That was probably taken back in the 60s, I'm going to guess. So these people that owned this at one time had some money. That there I do want to talk about. I'm going to pause it there. I hit the pause button. Hopefully it pauses. That is our present barn. Now there's a lean-to on this side of the barn that's not in this picture. So this was pre-lean-to, I guess you'd say. I think this was taken in the 60s to maybe 50s. The story on that barn, which is why I want to pause this and tell you, is that according to the story I've heard, that barn used to be a church. And it was a church up in Mexico, Missouri, I believe. I started to say Moberly. I know it started with an M, but I believe it was Mexico, Missouri. It was a church up there, and it was a log church. It's all logs. On the inside there, when you get in there, it's all hand-hewed logs. And anyway, it's pretty neat construction, but it doesn't remind me of a church, but that's what it supposedly was. I just thought I'd let you know that. Now we'll move on. Our house is 144 feet long. It's a crazy house. Trust me, I did not buy it for the house. I didn't even go in the house when I bought the farm. I was standing on the driveway, right about the corner, lower left corner of the picture there. That's where I was standing when I bought the farm. I didn't even go in the house. Couldn't even tell what it looked like. This is the original house. That is inside the house, believe it or not. It's still inside the house. And that's what it looked like back in the 30s. That picture there, the date on it is May 1937. And that is still inside the house to this day. And the part that's on the right there is, well, actually, you can't really see it very good. I'll show you in another photo. The part that's on the right there, that's where my man cave is now. What they did was they had a building on the far left and a building on the far right, and they roofed over all of it and even added on in addition, and that's how it got to be so long. And it became a dam all the way across the valley, and therefore they had to put a creek under the house because it literally is, a house goes all the way across the valley. I just thought you'd get a kick out of seeing these really old pictures and, to see how it started. See, there's the first house on the right there. Then they had another house on the left, and then they roofed over all of it. The house on the right, by the way, that white house that was on the right, that's the apartment today that we lease out now. Airbnb apartment. It's really nice, actually. That little building that's in the far back, we call that the carriage house. I think that's just what they used as a garage. The sidewalk doesn't look like that anymore. It's now concrete, but it's in that same shape. I think most of those pictures were taken in the 30s. And now you can see the house that's on the far left, and then they roofed over all of it, as you saw in those earlier pictures. I do not know what that little house is there on the left, that little building. There is a foundation there in that area, but I assume it must have been a well or something, but there doesn't look like a hole in the ground anywhere. So I don't know, and that's what we call the carriage house. He stayed in that upper floor while he was building the main log cabin. That's what my understanding is. These are just some of his cattle. He had a meat packing company, the guy that owned this farm. That kind of built it up. His name was Gerber, and he had a meat packing company, my understanding. There's some of the fields, and you can see that terrace that runs about halfway up the hill there, and then there's another terrace up at the wood line, and those are the terraces that came through in the 40s. The bulldozers came through in the 40s and created those terraces, and that's what knocked down the old houses that you can't see anymore on the back of the property. There's a couple more unique pictures coming. I thought I'd just let them all play and, just so you can see it. Back there, that really you're angled right at where those old houses used to be on that photo. This is in the front yard of the house again. Apparently he must have had a Great Dane. I guess that's what that is. And then just some of his horses. These were back in the 30s as well, I'm sure, based on the frame of the picture. They had some ornate frames around their photographs back then, didn't they? I think they were quite well-off people with his meat packing company. I'm not sure what you call those. I think that may be the standard bred horse there. I'm not really sure about that, but English attire. Looks like they were out for a trail ride here. And this, just another view. That barn that's in the left there, that's a field barn, and my wife still uses that today. Looks like she was in the leisure chair there out in the front yard. Those trees are huge now, by the way. That's the way it kind of looked when we bought it right there, even though that picture was taken much earlier, except that the fencing was all falling down. That's just another one of the little sheds. We keep our lawnmower in that shed as of now. And here's, I'm going to pause it there. That's the spring house. The little house that he's sitting in front of is the spring house, and there's a spring that comes out of that hill, and it's a pretty large spring, and that's the spring that fills the pond as you come through our gate, which is basically right behind my head there. The gate would be where you come in, and then to my right, or actually to the right of the photograph, would be where the pond is. So the water ran down the hill and filled the pond, and still does to this day. And the pond's fairly deep. The pond's about 11 feet deep. But, you know, looks like he's sitting there maybe enjoying a cool glass of water, or maybe he's drinking a beer that was kept in the cold water. That's possibly what it is, because that looks like a beer bottle on the table. I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on. That trough there, I think, was just a reservoir where they stored the water up and let it feed down by gravity. That's what it looks more like today, although the doors are basically falling off of it now. It's pretty much disrepair. We need to get up there and fix that up. This is another thing. I'm going to pause it there. They had a tennis court. Now, I think, based on, see, the barn is in the background there. That's the barn I showed you earlier. And based on that tennis court has to be where the pond is today. That's the best I've got. I don't know. I can't figure it out. And it doesn't look like there'd be enough room to put that tennis court where the pond is today, but that's all I got. I can't figure out where else it could be. Yeah, it's got to be there. So anyway, that's just me being confused again. And moving on to the next picture, I think this might be the last, well, one of the last ones there. This is probably in the 60s, putting up some hay. And we're still doing that now. And that's the last photo. So let me move it back here. So anyway, I just thought you guys might get a kick out of that. I know some of the longtime subscribers have seen bits and pieces of the farm, and I thought you might get a kick out of seeing where it came from. The story I got was the guy bought the place, the Gerber man bought it in the 1930s, and he built that little carriage house in the back, and he lived in the upstairs while he built the main log cabin. The main log cabin's bigger than it actually looks there. It's pretty good size for a log cabin. And then when you roof over the whole thing and make it bigger and bigger, it turns out there's almost 7,000 square feet of concrete. And lots of people, give me all kinds of advice. You need to get this, and you need to do that. And you need, I've already done pretty much everything that's reasonably possible. The only thing that you could really do at this point is tear it down, build a new house. That's really about all you could do at this point. And that's the truth. And, when you stop and think about it, 7,000 square feet, that's like 3 large houses. I'm not saying huge houses, but that's 3 good-sized large houses that I'm trying to heat with one wood stove. Yeah, that's why I burn so much wood. And, people say, shut it off. Well, it's not designed very well for shutting off, although we have as much of it closed off as we can close off. It just is what it is. And like I said, when I get tired of doing that, or when I can't do it anymore, we'll move up to the rental retreat, and we'll just use electric heat, and we'll be good. So that's where that stands. I thought I'd show you something else. Since we showed you that, I thought I'd show you something else that I don't think I've ever shown on the channel before. Something I made when I was 18. Or I might have made it when I was 16, actually. In fact, I think I probably did. I was probably 16 or 17 when I made this. It's a crossbow. And I made it pretty much from scratch. I didn't make the limbs. I cut these limbs off of an old hunting bow and made this angle iron frame here and bolted them to that angle iron frame. And I had to make my own trigger and everything. And if you look here at the trigger, you can see it holds until you pull the trigger, and then bingo, it lets go, and then it recocks itself. So I had to devise that whole trigger mechanism, as a kid, and I did that. So I think it's pretty cool, and it's really accurate. There's a little peep sight here, and you look through, and then you have these little pins up here for the sights. And after you get it sighted in, if you sight it in at 20 yards, what this thing is really good for is shooting fish. If you go, people that go bow fishing, well, I could stand on the boat, and if I could see a fish, I pretty much got it every time. Because I learned what I had to do was, if I took the 20-yard pin and put the 20-yard pin right at the bottom of the fish, that would account for the refraction. No matter how far the fish was, it just seemed like it worked every time. And it would go right through the middle of the fish and get them every time. So, shot a lot of fish with this thing. Well, I think that's it for show and tell. Hey, I'm going through my second childhood. I can do show and tell if I want to. All right, we're going to questions now. So let me go up to the top and see where we have our questions. Let's see. X Faster from Italy. I just happened to see that. I see UK, Mexico, golly, Amsterdam. My gosh, do we have an international crowd? And I screwed the song up so bad. That was the worst job I ever did on playing that song. Zappa 1 PNT, put questions in front of your questions. Yes, very good. Thank you for reminding everyone. I'm moving on down here, and I'm looking for those questions. If I don't see questions, I'm not stopping too much, unless I see something obvious. Doug Centeniello says, rather have a John Daly. That's when you add vodka to that. Yeah. No, I'll stick with my Arnold Palmer. Zappa saying, mixed drinks already? Yeah, man, I'm hitting the heavy stuff. This is really good. If you've never had it, it is really good. Half tea and half lemonade, and it's sweet, by the way. I don't know if it'd be that good if it wasn't sweet. It's really good sweet. As if I'm not sweet enough. I can't even say that without laughing. Okay, let's see. 1066 Wastrel, Wastrel, is the straight edge just over the bridge taken from the fretboard or metal fret height? Metal fret height. Yeah, I like to have the frets on there when I do that. And I like to see it, you can get it too far, it's a balancing thing, and it's a little bit of an experience thing, but for the most part, you'll probably be just fine if you take your straight edge, go right down your frets, and then at where the saddle is supposed to be on your bridge, if you clear that area by about no more than a 1/16 of an inch. So somewhere between 40 thousandths and a 1/16 of an inch, which I think is 62.5 thousandths, something like that. So, somewhere between 40 and 60 thousandths, if you clear it by that much, which is about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters for my metric friends out there. Are you impressed that I know all that with metric? No, somebody gave me that tip. All you do is it's just 1 millimeter equals about 40 thousandths. So if I'm going 40 thousandths, that's 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters. It's pretty simple math, really. I'm not much of a genius when it comes to math. I'm actually pretty slow on math. Doug Pastuck says, hi, Jerry. Could the rattle be loose kerfing where the top... Yeah, it could be, Doug. It very much could be. I just can't see it. I can't... And I've had lights in there, and I can't feel it. I'm moving everything around, but there's something loose. There's no doubt. I don't think it's critical. I don't think it's going to make any difference, to be quite honest about it, because I don't think it's a structural looseness type issue. But, you know, I want to fix it if I can find it. Gerald Tackett says, would you talk about the legally of using Brazilian rosewood for bridges and fretboards? The legality? I don't know the legality of that, Gerald, or I would talk about it. I know there's quite a bit of, I know there's been a lot of issues with that over the years. I figure if it's available, I'm using it, and to me, that's legal. You know, I know there was some grandfathering of things. I don't know the whole story, so I really shouldn't even try to tackle it. But my opinion is, if you've got it, use it. You know, because you know, what else are you going to do with it? And you might as well use it. But you know, I know some of it's not available anymore. It's hard to get, or very hard to come by, and they license. You know, it's a limited licensing and that sort of thing. Jason Wallen? No question here, just wanted to say that history is cool. I could look at old pictures all day long. Thanks for sharing. Well, thank you, Jason, for the nice comment there. I appreciate that. I just thought that it was time to show some of that. I think it was really cool. The way we got those old photographs, I'll digress for just a second. I'll try to keep it short. The boy that lived here, his name was Bill Gerber, but he was adopted. Him and his brother were adopted. And to hear him tell it, and I'm just using his words, they were basically adopted to be a slave, to just work. Their father apparently worked them to death. And I can relate to that. I kind of grew up that way myself. So, I mean, I kind of understand where they're coming from. But, you know, all the concrete that was poured here, and there's quite a bit of it, he told me that him and his brother had to mix all that by hand and pour it. And, boy, I mean, if they just did that, if that's all they did a heck of a lot of work. So apparently they worked pretty hard. And they said they really didn't like their father at all, that they loved their mother. And, in fact, when he came through here to visit his mother's grave, you know, he stopped in here, and that's where we got the pictures. So anyway, he came back to visit his mother's grave, but he really never did like his father. So I kind of can relate to some of that. I always got along with my father in terms of I understood where he was coming from, but he was a real hard man, you know. So I kind of, and that's one of the reasons, and it's the truth, one of the reasons why I took so many psychology classes when I was in college. I took them as electives and everything because I was trying to understand him and me both, you know. And I think that was probably the smartest thing I think I ever did. Let's see, moving on. Where did we find the pictures? Well, I answered that one. So that's HOXOH again. I don't know how to say that. 1, 2, 3. Anyway, I see your comments all the time, and I know you're from, I want to say, I don't know which country you're from. I want to say Sweden or someplace like that. But anyway, I know you're over there, Denmark or Sweden or Switzerland or somewhere like that. 1066 Wastrel again. What do you farm on your farm? Well, we really don't farm. It's just a horse farm. I mean, we cut hay off of it. Actually, last year was probably the last year for that because our equipment is just pitiful, and it killed me last year. I mean, I just about died doing it. I never worked so hard in my whole life as trying to cut that hay and bale that hay as last year. My God, that was hard. It was horrendous. Can't even begin to tell you how tough that was. So either we have to get new equipment or something to do it again because I'm just not going to do it. Plus the cutter sickle bar, it actually broke last year. Oh well, so there you go. Let's see, moving on to the next one. Martin Langhorst. Hi, Jerry. Can I store acoustic guitars in a cold environment if there are no temperature fluctuations? The lowest temperature in the winter some days would be around 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, Martin, I'd say if it wasn't strung up, you'd probably be okay. 26 is a little bit on the cold side. I'd like to see that more around in the 40s. I think if you were in the 40s, I don't think I'd have any problem with that at all. Even mid 30s and up, but once you get down below the freezing 32, it's a little bit on the cold side. I don't think you'd have any problem anyway, as long as it's not strung up, and as long as you're keeping it dry and all that. I don't think it'd be a big issue. It might do something to your finish, and especially the way it dries out and that kind of stuff. And I always say that they stretch more than they dry out, and they definitely do. There is no question about that. But if the instrument has already stretched and it's been out in the humidity, and then you put it in a really cold place like that, it would dry out quite a bit, and it would cause the finish maybe to wrinkle and chip and something like that. So I'd hope you could do it a little bit warmer than 26. Otherwise, I don't think you'd have a problem. If especially in the 40s, I think you'd be fine. Scott Roberts, you can't kill too many weeds with that crossbow, just saying. I don't know why I want to kill weeds, but that crossbow was a lot of fun. I think I told this story briefly one time before. We had some party at my mom and dad's house, and the whole family was over, uncles, aunts, everybody. It was a big deal. And my one uncle, he couldn't believe how I could shoot with that thing. And so he wanted to challenge me. And keep in mind, at this time, I was already Missouri State champion with a regular bow, So I was a good shot with a bow. And that makes you a good shot with a rifle, because if you can shoot with a bow, you can pretty much shoot with a rifle. And so that thing is very much like a rifle. So at 20 yards, he was putting quarters up on the bales, and I was hitting them every shot. And every time I missed, I had to pay him a quarter. Well, I didn't miss. So I got all of his quarters. So then he put a nickel up there, and I hit the nickel. And this was at 20 yards, keep in mind. It's pretty far, 60 feet. And then he put a dime up there, and I said, I ain't shooting at the dime. It's just too small. I could barely see the nickel, But anyway, so that's how accurate that little crossbow is. It's pretty dang accurate. I never shoot it anymore, though. I haven't shot it it's probably been 20 years since I've strung it up. It's not very powerful, by the way. It's only 35 pounds. That's why it's great for shooting fish, because it doesn't shoot, down in, stick it in the bottom of the pond too much. But I only shot it in creeks anyway, where the gravel would hit the arrow would hit the gravel and bounce back up, because the arrows were hollow aluminum and they would float. Moving on. Herschel, have you collected sales commissions owed to you on Yairi, on which you recently worked? I bought it because of your video number 612. Well, everything that leaves here has pretty much been paid for, if that's what you're asking. I don't know. But yeah, everything's cool on it as far as I know. Hopefully you like it. He bought it because I worked on it here, apparently, huh? That's kind of cool. Let's see. Moving on. I think it scrolled up on me just now. Now I got to find it again. Okay, here we are. Alan Pettibone. Good morning from snowy Montana. I always fight the dry air in the cold months here. It is better to be humid and fluctuating, or drier and more stable. Yeah, is it better to be humid and fluctuating, or dry and more stable? Well, the happy medium is always the best. Any kind of an extreme is bad. Extremely wet is really bad. I'm telling you, it's way worse than extremely dry. You can believe what you want, but I'm telling you, I got no reason to lie to you about that. Wood will swell up like a dadgum sponge, man. But it can only dry so much. And keep in mind, they already dried it at the factory. You can't get much drier than they dried it at the factory. If it dried completely, you're only going to get 6% more dryness out of it. You know, and it can't do that. It's not going to do that. In fact, from the moment it leaves the factory, for the most part, they're gaining humidity. I bet you anybody checks their humidity, on their instrument, and if you check it with a moisture meter, you're going to find that it's in the 8 to 10% range. It's not in the 6% range anymore. It's gained humidity. So the myth about them drying out, the myth about needing all this humidification is a myth, and it's a sales gimmick for the music stores. Believe what you want. I got no reason to lie about it. I truly do not have an issue if you choose to humidify your instrument. It's just that too much is way worse than too little. Moving on. RZH, Jerry, thanks for repair tip for my guitar neck dent. Practiced on some scrap and did the deed with a kiss of the iron over the damp cloth. Will it also fix the dent on the wife put in the car? No, I don't think it'll fix that dent. Sorry. Although, I've seen people do things with dry ice on dents and stuff. It's been a long time. I can't remember how they did, what they did. But apparently there's some way to pull some sort of dents out of some sort of things with like dry ice and things like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming, but seem like I remember that. Harry Lucius, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Harry Lucius says, do you appreciate Larry Rice? Well, you can believe what you want. I'm not making this up, but his one instrumental that he has is my very favorite mandolin instrumental in the world. And you know the name of it? It's called Tabasco. Look it up. Larry Rice playing Tabasco. That is my favorite instrumental I've ever heard. It's just so cool. I mean, most people won't even appreciate it when you listen to it. But it's so cool when you listen to how many, arrangements, for lack of a better term, that they have all the way through the song. It is killer. It's just killer, the way they've arranged it. And I used to call in weekly, before I was on the radio, I used to call in weekly to have that Tabasco played on the Bluegrass program. I love that song. And that's Larry Rice. So, do I appreciate Larry Rice? I think I just answered that. He actually truly is my favorite mandolin tune I've ever heard. Dan's Tune says, what causes cracks in tops of guitars? Why not use humid packs by Planet Waves? Well, Dan's Tune, like I said, the myth is that drying out causes the cracks. But I'm telling you for sure, it's not the drying out that causes the cracks. It's the getting too wet, because the wood can only swell so much and then it pops the finish. Your finish does not stretch, especially a good finish. A good finish is a brittle, hard finish. And when that wood swells up, it just does this and it cracks the finish. It can't dry down much more than it already is dry. Stop and think about it, guys. It's only common sense. I mean, why would I make this up? Like I said, it's been ingrained since the 60s. Since those humidifiers came out, it's the biggest selling thing they can sell in the doggone music stores, and I don't blame them for pushing them. Heck, I'd do that too if I was in a music store and I had to make a living, because especially now, it's hard to compete with the doggone internet. I'd be pushing everything I could push. So I don't blame the music stores, but I'm telling you for sure, it started out as a gimmick and it's still a gimmick. And that's all it is. And, and especially when you say those humidity packs, I would never, not ever, don't ever use those. Believe what you want. But those packs are filled with all kinds of chemicals, and they always eventually leak. And when they do, you will hate it. It just messes up the inside of your guitar so bad. If you've got to use humidity, use real humidity. Don't use those stupid chemical packs. I'm seriously telling you, do not use them. When they leak, you'll be going, oh, I wish I would have listened to him, because they tear up everything. They make such a mess. They make stains. I've seen the stains go through the wood and actually show up on the outside of the wood. That's how bad they are. They'll even come through the wood and screw up the finish. That's how bad they are. Do not use the humidity packs. Do not use any packs that have chemicals in them. I got no reason to say that. It won't make me smarter, brighter. It won't make me better looking. It won't make me rich. I'm telling you because I know. And you can do what you want with the rest of that information. There you go. That's another rant. Let's see. Prolo Tomasi. Do you ever use moose antler to get bigger pieces? Well, I've covered that a couple times there, Mr. Prolo Tomasi. I don't know how to pronounce that either. But anyway, the bigger they are, the more hollow they are. Nature takes care of that by, like those giant elk antlers, they're just as porous as they can be on the inside. They have a very hard outer shell, but the inside is almost hollow. It's not hollow, it's fibrous. It's just real fibrous and like lots of pores in it. And where the smaller deer, it's almost solid all the way through. And but that depends on the deer too, because there's a lot of deer antler that's real porous too. But the bigger they are, honestly, the more porous they are. In fact, I've never seen an elk antler, for instance, that I can make a mandolin saddle out of. Can you believe that? I mean, maybe on the tips. I haven't checked all the tips and things. You might be able to make a mandolin saddle out of some of the antler tips. I don't know. But out of the elk tips, I mean. But anyway, the point is, the bigger they are, nature takes care of it by lightening them up, by making them more porous and more hollow. Otherwise, they'd be so heavy, I guess. So yeah, the moose thing just doesn't work that well. It probably would work at the very base, because usually the very base is really solid. Moving on, let's see. Scott Roberts, crossbow is a popular chemical weed killer. Oh, just so you know. You know, I have heard of that now that you say that, but I didn't connect it. Sorry. Wasted humor. Yeah, you wasted that one right over the top of my head. But I have heard of the crossbow weed killer now that you say it, but I didn't connect the dots. I didn't always, you know, I'm not always the sharpest knife in the drawer, you know, Scott. X Faster. Hey, Jerry, I have a question for you. Are small humidity and temperature changes really that bad for an acoustic guitar? Do they make that much difference in the setup? Small changes, no. They're not that bad, that big a difference. When you go from one extreme to the other, it creates all kinds of issues. That's why, like it's been years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, we had that one guitar that came in here from the Philippines. It was made by that Philippine guitar master that makes those really fancy guitars. A lot of people just hated it because it was so fancy. But that thing, you know, it was so humid where he built it. And when it came over here, it just, you know, it just shrunk basically. Because over there, it was probably 22% humidity. And when you bring it over here, you know, if you build it in that and all that and you keep it in that, it's no problem. But you change it to an extreme, then it's a real problem. So small changes, not that big a deal. Big changes, a big deal. You know, so that's the best I can tell you. There's no black and white absolute on any of that. You know, it really depends on where it started and where it finished. that's really what it depends on. Moving on. Herschel, I was kidding about commission. Acoustic Shop Chapman's challenged you to debate on humidifying guitar. They did? I didn't. Acoustic Shop Chapman's challenge you to debate on humidifying guitar. I'd be happy to debate it with them. It's not a problem. I am not disagreeing exactly about the humidification. What I'm disagreeing with is that people think every guitar needs to be humidified. And typically, if you keep them in a place where you like to be, then I would say absolutely you don't need to humidify it. But if you take them like the Philippine example, the guy built it in 18-20% humidity. You bring it here, you better humidify that guitar. You know what I'm saying? Because it ain't gonna like it here, and I'll talk to them all day long about it, and they'll never change my opinion on that, because wood is wood and it acts the same way all the time. It never changes how it acts. It's just black and white fact. There's really no debate to it, to be truthful. Matt Tommen, I have a guitar that I need to put into storage. Will detuning it or leave it tuned be better? I would detune it. Yeah, I would detune it. If you're anything that you're not gonna play for quite a while, it's better to detune it. Do I follow my own advice? Not always, but it's not a bad idea to do it. It's a good idea to tune them down if you're not gonna play them for quite a while. Daniel Schaefer, seen him a lot of times in the comments. Jerry, I was wondering if you're in a pinch for streams, could you actually send them with some really fine paper? Okay, probably another joke that I'm not getting. Daniel Schaefer, I was wondering if you're in a pinch for streams, could you actually send them with some really fine paper? Either there's some typos there or I just don't get what he's asking. So I'm sorry, Daniel, I just don't get that one. Sorry. Chan, I've told you guys before too, I'm a terrible reader. I mean, I'm not a good reader at all. It's one of the hardest things I do. Charlie Rostern, have you ever used mahogany for back and sides? I've seen it on guitars a lot, but I haven't come across. Yeah, I don't use it on my mandolins, but I did build a guitar with curly mahogany back and sides. It was a unique mahogany. I can't remember specifically what kind it was, but it was a very hard mahogany, and it was a lot of curl in it, a lot of flame in it. And Ron, the fellow that was making my mandolin saddles for a while, Ron, you've seen him on the channel a time or two. His son is the one that has that guitar. I built that guitar for him quite a few years ago. I'm going to say, well, it was before I moved it down to this shop, so 6 or 7 years ago, something like that, probably. George Adams, do you get some protection from humidity and pressure changes by keeping the guitar in a good case? I think on the short term you might, but I don't think so. It's going to kind of get there. Humidity and atmospheric pressure kinds of goes into just about everything unless it's completely sealed, and I don't think a guitar case is sealed enough, although there are some out there probably that are pretty good. Anyway, I would say probably not on the average at least. Mike Curtin wound up with a 5-string guitar built in Philippines. When I lived in the low desert in Southern California, it lasted about 6 months. Yeah, and it would. I mean, it's just black and white. I'm not kidding you at all when I tell you, go look under a microscope. If you don't believe me, take a piece of wood, take a microscope and look at it. It's just filled with holes. It's a sponge, and it will suck moisture in just like a sponge sucks moisture in. And of course, it will dry out just like a sponge dries out. But once you already dry it and build your instrument, it isn't going to get much drier. Just that simple. It can only get wetter from that point on. Believe what you want. I know it's been indoctrinated, and everybody and their brother has preached it since day one, just like they've preached hide glue since day one. And it's just black and white, 100% wrong. I didn't say 99%. It's wrong. I still don't have a problem. If you want to humidify your instrument, just don't use the chemicals. Okay. You guys just like to get me going, don't you? Let's see. Peter Bryan at Albert Callens. You have to put, he's talking to Albert Callens. You have to put question marks in front of your thing. So let me see if I can see where Albert Callens asked a question. I'll scroll back up and see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. Hi, I have an old Marwin guitar. Is it supposed to be Martin maybe? It does not have a truss rod. It has a slight bow around the 12th. Anything I can do to get the bow out? Thanks in advance. Well, Albert, not easily. You know, there's all this hype about taking heat lamps and bending it and all that. And to some degree, that sort of kind of works. But typically, if it was pulled in there to begin with, the wood gets a memory and it's going to pull it right back in there. Especially if you fix it with those kinds of methods where you just heat it and try to straighten it with pressure and all that. Your only real good way to fix that is to take the fretboard off, clean everything really, really well, put some back bow pressure in it and glue it all back in there, and if you went to that extreme, then if it was me, I'd go ahead and put a truss rod in it too. So honestly, that's about the only good option. I mean, you'll hear everybody else and their brother tell you can heat it and bend it, and you can, and it will work kind of, sort of, for a while, but it will come back. How do I know that? I can't imagine how I know that. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling back down to try to find where I was, because I'm not sure now. Okay. Zappa is asking, Jerry, the Philippines is between 70 and 85% humidity. Yeah, well, I do want to make a distinction here. Humidity and moisture content are really two different measurements. Both of them, one can affect the other. Humidity can affect the moisture content in the wood. The moisture content in the wood won't necessarily be at 85%, 70 to 85%, but it could easily be 30 or 40%, it'll probably never get up to 75 or 80% humidity, well, unless they didn't dry it at all right out of the tree. Because when it comes out of the tree, I don't know that I know the exact number, but you're going to be way up there. It's going to be 70, 80% when it comes straight out of the tree. Might even be more than that. But once you dry it down in the kiln, it's down, at least in North America, when they dry them for instruments here, they dry them down to roughly 6%. You can't get it much drier than that. I don't care what your house is like. You can't get it much drier than that. If you're in the high mountains and using wood heat constantly, you might get it drier than that. But it'd be hard. It just isn't that likely. That's why you don't really need to humidify them. You need to keep them from getting too humid. That's really what you need. Believe it or not. Moving on. I can lead a horse to water, but I cannot make any of them swim on their back. Charlie says, thanks for the answer. I'll look into curly mahogany. Yeah, it was a really nice wood that I used. You'll like it if you find that. Trying to think where I got it from. Can't remember. I think I ordered it with some wood supplier online type thing. Might have possibly been StewMac, but I don't think it was. I don't know. 7 or 8 years ago, can't remember. Poppy K says, link to Bohr guitar, not correct. Link to Bohr guitar, not correct. I don't know what that means. Is that supposed to be my brother's guitar? Because there's a link in the description to my brother's playing the guitar. And I found out that link, I think, is for family and friends only that he has on Facebook, so I don't think everybody can see that. Ron Campbell, when am I going back to Mountain View? I didn't see any question marks there, but I just happened to see the question. We usually go in June. I think it's the first full weekend in June. Blaine Cox, what is the brand name of your plastic jaw pliers? I don't know if I know a brand name. I think I just got them off of eBay. Well, actually, one of my viewers sent me the first pair, and then I bought another pair because Caleb was here. The pair I bought is actually a little bigger than the ones Caleb had. I don't really need these big ones, but they're okay. Oh, yeah, you'll like this name. Yeah, you'll like this. Can you see it? It's written in Chinese. But there is a PH-200 under there, so if that helps. It says IPS PH-200. But they're good. I like them. They're well made enough. Actually, these say made in Japan. Yeah, there is a thing here that says made in Japan. So I said Chinese, but it's Japanese, I guess. Anyway, so PH-200, IPS PH-200. I don't know if those are on the products I use or not. I think they might be. So I have a page on my website, products I use. And, if you want to support the channel and help me out a little bit, I get a tiny kickback. It doesn't raise your price any. I'd appreciate it if you would check there and buy the products off of those links if you can, because I do get a kickback through Amazon. Anyway. So if it's on, I hope that's on there. If it's not, somebody could let me know with an email or something later, and I'll put it on there. I'll double check it if I remember. That's the problem, is remembering and finding the time. So I don't know what that link to Bohr guitar is. I think it must be my brother's guitar, maybe. B-O-R. Yeah, I don't know what that would be. Moving on. Let's see. Carl M. I had a ukulele shipped from Hawaii during the summer with a humidifier in the case. Was buying the humidifier a mistake? If it came from Hawaii, maybe not, because Hawaii is pretty humid too. So you might, in that case, want to keep it humidified for a while at least, and maybe slowly wean it off of that. But, because you are coming from a really humid place there. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I said, it's not a black and white absolute 100% on any of that with the humidity. It's just that in general terms, they dry them out so dry before they build them, there's very little chance they're going to dry out anymore. Period. It's just common sense. Okay, he says, the link to my brother's guitar is not working. Yeah, well, that's the reason. I think it's a private link that I didn't know that when I put it in there. So I do know some people were able to get to it, but they're probably already friends with my brother. So that's the reason. So I guess you could ask, on Facebook to be a friend with my brother, and then if you did that, well, then you should be able to get to that link. So sorry about that. I didn't know that when I put it in there. Paul Akers is saying, can you glue bone to bone on a saddle or a nut? Not really. Have I done it? Yeah, actually I have. It's not a good practice. I wouldn't recommend it. It depends on how it's being supported and all that. You could laminate two thin pieces together. You could do that, and it would probably be okay. For a mandolin saddle, I'm not too sure I'd do that, but you probably could. It just depends on the glue you used and all that. If it's strong, it's strong. I don't think I'd do it as a common practice, but if you were in a pinch and that's what you had, it'd probably work. So I don't know. Sorry for kind of a wimpy answer, but it's not something I would typically do, I guess. Peter Bryan, Jerry, I mentioned to Albert Collins that I have taken the original small frets off my Martin neck and replaced them with larger frets to straighten the neck out. What is your opinion? Yeah, well, now that you say that, that's a good point. That is an option. If the fret tang is bigger, the top of the fret won't make any difference. But if the tang that goes in the slot is bigger, you could definitely affect an underbow. So that first question that I didn't think about that answer at the time, but where he said he has an underbow at the 12th fret, and can he fix that without a truss rod? And I said, well, you'd have to take the fretboard off and do that. But honestly, that is a good option, and I have done that too. I just didn't think of it when he asked that question. But yeah, if the tang of your fret is bigger than the tang that's in the frets presently, then that will take a lot of that underbow out and it could potentially make it too much. It could potentially make it an overbow. So yeah, you could definitely do that. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. But that's a good question. I'm glad somebody brought it up, and it is a truthful answer that yes, it will change it for sure. I know for sure it will change it. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Blaine Cox, do you carve other items like rifle stocks, walking sticks, wooden statues? I have carved a couple of rifle stocks in the past, Blaine. I made a real nice rifle stock for my muzzle loader, which I don't even use anymore. It was my fault. I screwed up and didn't clean it one season, and I forgot about it, didn't realize I hadn't cleaned it, and it really pitted the barrel, so I don't even use my muzzle loader anymore. But I built a walnut stock for it to replace the plastic stock that it came with. I didn't like a muzzle loader with a plastic stock. It just didn't, those two things didn't seem like the same thing to me. So I did build a stock for that. And I've made a wooden stock for some other gun, but I don't remember when or where at this point. But I don't, as a general rule, I don't carve other things for the most part. Okay, we're about out of time here, and we're down to the bottom, so I think I'm going to just answer one or two more here, and we're going to call it a day. Hoxo123 says, could you fix the porous part of the antler with CA glue? To a minor degree, yes, you can. And I do that actually on these saddles here. Almost all of them have a little bit of porosity, and but yet I know they're solid at least halfway through. So I try to keep at least one full solid side so that they're strong. But if the porosity looks like it's quite a bit, well, I'll take CA glue and pour on here and then sand it back off. That just makes it a lot more solid and strong, structurally strong. So yes, you can do that, but I wouldn't say you could do that on a large scale, just on the edge there. If you've got some porosity and you want to fill it in, you could definitely do that with CA glue. Mike Curtin, Stu Mack makes pliers for widening frets, tangs. Oh yeah, that probably yeah, I know what you're saying. That probably crimps them like. I don't know, but I have heard of that. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, you could probably do that. Use those pliers. Bill Roach, looks like this will be the last question. When setting up a mandolin, what should the action be set to at the 7th and 12th frets? Well, I'm going to say roughly around 40 thousandths at about the 7th fret, and some of them I'll even set that low at the 12th fret. It depends how straight they are and how good they are. You can't, but I would say roughly, if you just use as a ballpark figure, about 40 some thousandths at the 42 or 44 thousandths, something like that, at the 7th fret, you'll be in pretty good shape. You can go a little lower than that, but that ought to give you a ballpark number, at least to start on, and then if you want to lower it down a little bit more, a lot of it's just trial and error. Boy, a whole bunch more questions just popped up. I hate to pass them up. We got 229 viewers still, and we're past our time, but let me look at them real quick. Well, maybe not that many, just one, it looks like. Yeah, Scott Roberts says, thank you, now go cut some firewood. Yeah, it's pretty much the name of that tune. I've actually got enough to get me through the weekend at least, so I may not cut any this weekend. Barry Bark says, were you born locally? I was born near my mother. I was born in St. Louis Hospital. My parents lived in Eminence, Missouri at the time, down at the Jack's Fork and Current River, down that way. That's where they lived. They lived in Eminence, Missouri. They had a Dairy Queen restaurant. Now, not the modern Dairy Queen. That's what the old ice cream places in the country were always called Dairy Queen, but they weren't affiliated with the modern Dairy Queen. That's going to be about it. I'm not going to do an outro song because I screwed the first one up so bad. I'll just screw up the new. I'm not that good. I just can't play anymore. It's terrible. But thank you all much for being so nice to me and asking the questions and followed along today. Wow, we just went up to 250 viewers as I'm ready to quit. But thank you all for being so kind to me as always, and we will see you probably on Monday.